What's good, YouTube? My name is James Hodgreen, the owner of the Millionaire Mac Club, and we're back at y'all with another Millionaire Mac Talk. We have a very, very special guest, young future of the media creation. My main man, met him on Facebook, and we needed to connect. And I think y'all need to hear what he has to say because he's on the come up and has some great wisdom. So I'll introduce y'all to my man Jack. What's up, Jack? How you doing?
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Jack Buckley, as he said. I'm 16 years old, and I mainly do filmmaking stuff. In 2019, June 2019, I released my first feature film, the world's first Minecraft animated feature film. It's called Remnants, and that's up on my YouTube channel. And then since then, I've done a podcast where I talked about inspiring young creators, and from then on, I've been working on my second feature film. And thank you for having me again.
Man, that's awesome. That's really cool that you made that feature film so young, and it's the first of its kind. Honestly, like that's absurd to me. Like really. So my first question for you
Thank
is
you.
how long have you been in media creation and such?
Yeah, so I think there definitely could be different times I started because depending on how you define it. But the main thing I remember is in the fall, I believe, of 2014, me and my cousins were kind of bored. So we basically just took out one of our parents' phones, I assume, and just started filming this show. We called it Guild of the Power Souls, and it was sort of this actiony show. Obviously by today's standards, it's not that good, but we worked hard on that. We made that into like an episodic series that we made, and we kind of every time because my relatives live in New Jersey, so every few months we would go down there and keep doing that. And from then on, I just kept building it up. But that's the main thing I think of when starting the filmmaking journey.
Right. Wait. So when you guys started making that in 2014, did you guys just make it for you guys and then you guys would just like watch it, or would you guys show your parents and stuff, or?
What we would do is I think for the first episode we just showed it from the phone, and then we got very ambitious. We were like, all right, we got to show this up on the big TV and get all the things, and that was harder to do when I didn't really know anything about how to use technology. Um, but yeah, we would sort of make it into a whole event that, I mean, we would have our parents and uncle and aunts in the show as well. So it wasn't just us, but yeah, we would definitely make it a big event, I guess.
Right. So it seems like you started from a young age, you're still super young. Do you come from a media background, or do people in is this a norm for people in your family, or is this something you just picked up, or where'd you get this inspiration?
So yes, there is some references in my family. That's mainly from my dad. My dad, he went to NYU for film school. Not like it was a 6 month program, um, and then he's also done screenwriting. He doesn't do that now, but at that point he was very into screenwriting. So definitely have roots there. Um, I haven't necessarily. I probably would have gotten into filmmaking regardless, but that's been really helpful, especially on this project that I'm currently working on. Having someone who knows about screenwriting and film is just awesome to have. My uncle is also very interested in film, as well as my grandpa.
So that's awesome that you came from a sort of film background. Your dad had those roots, gave you those roots, and you have some strong support. That's really cool because my aunts and my grandma were actually in like the film industry, so that's what made me get into my little media creation. But I don't think I
Yeah.
started as young as you with like recording stuff. Like I would take some pictures, but I wasn't into film creating yet. So through your early career, what are some ups and downs you've had?
Since most of the stuff before my first feature, they were very small projects. They were just for fun. And so I think the main ups and downs were during the movie. And that was just because it was like over 3 years of teen. I guess it was just kind of hard to continue with that workflow.
Mhm.
That said, I never had a moment where I wanted to like quit things, but there were definitely at some points it was really, really hard to continue to push through and continue to work uh, on something for that long.
Right.
So I would say that's the main ups and downs, just having that sort of consistency for that long.
Right.
Um,
So what do you think? So you said you were in a 3-year workflow. That's crazy. So what do you think kept your attention and kept your motivation? Like the days that you weren't necessarily wanting to quit, but the days you're just kind of like, like what got you through?
well, so there were two things. First of all, and this is probably the main thing, is that my family is very supportive, and they're just overall great family. So it's very easy for me um, to stay committed to it when I know that I got people behind me. I got people supporting me. But not only that, I also was involved with a company called Youth Digital, and that's where I sort of started the whole animation uh, arena of like working in animation. And so they had a forum, like what they called a portal, where you could put videos, and so that was also the main part I started putting the movie on,
Mhm.
like little clips of it, and so that gained a huge following there. And so that was really motivating because it was like people are relying on me to put
Right.
this out. So that was also a big determining factor behind that.
So just off that, like when you're saying people are relying on you, what does that feeling feel like to you? Like, can you describe that to us?
Um, I mean, I guess it's evolved over time.
Mhm.
I think when I started it out, it was sort of just like, people think this is really cool, so I don't really want them to not think it's cool anymore.
Right.
But at this point, it's also sort of been because now when I'm working with a budget, I'm working with things. It's a lot more responsibility to make sure that the people you're working with are people um, who will stay working with you because I think connections are so important. So
Right.
I don't want to do wrong by those connections. I want to be um, the best I can be at that. And I guess it's not just like I don't want to let anyone down, um, but it is to a certain degree that I just want to produce the best I can um, to set up for the future because that's my main thing is setting up for the future.
Right. Building that great reputation and building a great network.
You
So
got it.
yeah, that's a strong part of the media world, business world, life in general, honestly. So I have another question for you. So you just mentioned like budgeting and building a network and just a lot of things that people your age and even people my age aren't necessarily worried about yet. So what helps you stay focused and keep your eye on the prize on a mission that not necessarily people your age would be pursuing, because like a lot of kids at the age of 16 aren't necessarily doing what you're doing. They're typically just consuming the production that's being put out, but you're really producing it. So how do you keep your
Thank
eye
you.
on the prize and not get distracted by what society says you should be doing?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of more from the place that I've just never felt a draw towards, um, doing what people think I should do, or I've never been someone who's very concerned with that. I'm more concerned about not in a narcissistic way, not like, oh, I only want to do what I want to do.
Right.
But in terms of, it's more that I'm not going to let people tell me like you can't do this because um, that's not saying I will ignore advice. It's not saying I will say,
Right.
I'm gonna let no one stand in my way of this. But at the same time, I know what I want to do. And so, for instance, when I was making my first movie, there were like relatives and honestly just a lot of people who would just kind of like, I mean, yeah, but you're not actually going to do that. Um, and that could be demotivating, but I just had to keep as you said, keep my eyes on the prize of what I wanted to do, and then that. But as you were saying earlier, with budgeting, I haven't really gotten into too much yet because that will be after the fundraising period for this film. Um, but in terms of building connections, again, I've just always been very focused on the future, and what I guess if I weren't focused on the future, I would probably just be playing video games all day.
Right.
Um, but I want to set myself up so I can have a really good future. And so to me, the hard work now just feels like just ends necessary to get to the eventual means, I guess. It doesn't feel like something that's hard to do, I guess, because of the
Right.
future centered on that.
I like that. So with all that you're doing, do you have do you do any of this with like some friends your age, or are you really dealing with a lot of people older than you, or what's that community like?
Yeah, so a lot of the community, as I referenced Youth Digital earlier, they came from that. Um, so I met a lot of people through there. My composer for my movies, he came from that. My best friend came from that, and a lot of friends came from that. So I think that's where I built a lot of connections for my first movie. But since then, I've been trying to build up my network past that. Um, so right now, especially with the Jack Buckley show, which was the podcast that I referenced,
Mhm.
um, trying to expand to older people who have a lot more experience and who will be valuable connections that I can, get to know and just help each other out. That tends to be what connections end up being. And so I've been trying to expand it to a more adult community, but definitely my core people are people like in their 20, like 19 and under at this point.
Right. So with that, with you trying to expand and get your face known in an older community, is there ever an intimidation factor that you go in like you obviously seem like the type that you really want to learn everything, but do you ever find yourself in a position of like you don't fully show what you know or expose what you know just because somebody's older than you and you're trying to pay respects? Hmm.
I've kind of always had older friends than me,
Hmm.
not like 20 years older friends,
Right.
um, but at the same time, sometimes it can be intimidating, but not necessarily because of age. It's more because of position.
Mhm.
Uh, like if someone's a TV executive, I'm gonna give a lot more respect and listening to that kind of person who kind of demands their position, demands respect. But I haven't really been intimidated by age, I wouldn't say, because that's sort of always what I've been around.
Right.
But I can definitely get intimidated if it's like, oh, this is a celebrity or whatever, and that's just something I'm still working on. But
In terms of like when you're dealing with like a celebrity or a TV executive, what's something that's helped you stay present in the moment and like stay true to yourself?
yeah, so I guess again, I I I just don't prefer to think about what's happening now. I prefer to think towards the future.
Right.
So so it does get really sometimes for instance, when I was interviewing Joseph Allen, who was the Golden Buzzer winner on America's Got Talent.
Mhm.
So he had been a really big inspiration for the last 6 months or so before that. So that was kind of nerve wracking.
Mhm.
Uh, but I guess I just calm down, I called my friends, I called my family a little bit just to kind of calm myself down. And then I just forced myself to do it, because sometimes things that make you nervous are also the things you really need to do.
Right.
At some point, I just had to sort of say, um, this is kind of scary to me, but it's something that needs to happen. And then I just
Right.
had to push through that, I guess.
I love that. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in, if it scares you, you most likely should do it. Unless it's life or death, but you should most likely do it. It's a great growth exercise. So
Yeah.
so you just mentioned that you'll like call your family, your friends. So with that, who would you say is your greatest inspiration?
Yeah. So I have a few. Um, I think a few years ago, before the youth digital company shut down, the teachers there were a big inspiration. But I think throughout my entire life, the main inspirations to me have been my grandparents and my dad, and also my mom. They're all they're extremely supportive, in sort of everything I'm doing, and that's been sort of instrumental for me doing, um, pretty much anything I do. And I know that they sort of are behind me, even if they don't really think I'm going to do it. Like, they didn't really think I was going to finish the movie, but they would still support me. Um, and I don't really think you should support people if they're doing dumb things. Like, don't be like, just do it. But I think if someone's willing to give you advice on what you probably shouldn't do, but still believes in you,
Mhm.
that's super helpful. Um, and so, yeah, I guess I would say them. But in terms of like actual like actions, that people have done, I would probably say mainly my dad, because currently he's has a Facebook group. He's building up,
Right,
his
yeah.
business, and so he's always been a really big inspiration to me in sort of what I've been doing, and always been more there on the movie knowledge side, uh, and just sort of we're very simpatico in terms of, like, our personalities, and so we're very in sync in that way. So I would say my dad in general.
Okay, that's awesome. So what is what's a lesson that you've learned from those inspirations that you would want to pass along to some people that are young like you and want to get into things that are out of the norm and really start chasing their dreams early? So what is some advice that you would give some people that are getting ready to take the leap or are taking the leap right now? What's some advice you give to them?
Yeah, good question. In terms of taking the leap, I would say a lot of people get in their own head, and they're very like, this has to be perfect.
Mhm.
And one lesson from this YouTuber named Peter McKinnon, who does a lot of cinematography things on YouTube, is that done is better than perfect. And that's what I think that's a pretty big thing for people, especially people my age, who are kind of like, well, yeah, but especially perfectionists who really need to get it right the first time. And I think it's almost impossible to get everything right the first time unless you're just super skilled.
Right.
And I think you need to have that building. So even if you think this isn't going to be good, like for instance, if you're making a film, the first film doesn't have to be perfect. Just shoot it, and then make another one, and keep building up your repertoire instead of just crippling yourself with this has to be perfect.
Mhm.
Eventually, you get to the point where your stuff is really good, and then you can be worried about perfection, or at least close to perfection. But in terms of taking the leap, you can't be worried about that, I think, at least at the
Right.
start.
I like that. No, I really like that. That's some great advice. That is some great advice. So what are some projects that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so on like a low scale, I am planning to start up a season 2 of the Jack Buckley show. At this point, some of the guests I have lined up are a few months away from, interviews, so that'll happen. But the main thing I'm focusing on right now is my second action mystery, uh, and that's I'm currently working on the screenplay. I'm almost done with draft 2 of the screenplay for that. So that's been taking up most of my focus. I've been working on it for 2 years at this point. And yeah, I just keep working on that. But that's the main thing I'm working on. I'm trying to keep my focus unfragmented between a bunch of different things and just staying focused on that because it's very important to me.
Right. I like that. I really like that. So my last question for you, you're 16, you're
Yeah.
young. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Um, um, well, my eventual goal is, my eventual goal is freedom, to just kind of mostly monetary, but also relationship freedom. So if I was 55 and wanted to start a company, a skateboard company at 55, I would have both the monetary and relationships to be able to do that. But in terms of 5 years from now, my closer goal is to become an executive producer slash director screenwriter. But the main thing is executive producer in film.
Mhm.
So hopefully at that point we would be further down the line. I would guess in 5 years from now, I will be almost done with my, I guess, third feature. That might not happen depending on how life goes. But if I were to project 5 years from now, that's where I think I would be. But I guess that kind of hinges on how this one does. Like if this is on a streaming service and it gets popular, that could totally dictate where that goes from there. So I guess it kind of depends on how this movie does. Um, but I would say the executive producer and eventually just be free to whatever I want to do at that point, or what my family wants to do, or whatever it is. Just having that sort of freedom, that's always been very, very important.
All right. Wrapping up, you want to let the people know where they can connect with you, where they can find your stuff. I know you're on YouTube, Facebook. Yeah, just let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah. So I'm on YouTube from my channel Mobius Studios, and then on Facebook from at Jack Buckley. I think those are my main outlets where you can find me. Mobius Studios is where I have my first feature on there. But yeah, those are my main content platforms. YouTube is my main place, but I'm also pretty active on Facebook at this point. So yeah, that's the main things. That's the
Awesome.
main places you can find me.
Matt, hey, y'all go check out his feature film on his YouTube. Y'all heard him. For all my young creators, like he said, it doesn't have to be
Uh,
done is better than perfect. So really get out there and go do what you want. Go chase your dreams. Start now. Tomorrow doesn't come. I wanna really say thank you, Jack, for being on. You gave some great insight, great
Thank you for having
insight.
me.
Yep. And I can't wait to
Great to be
see
here.
I can't wait to see the next feature film that you're working on. And just the work that you're gonna do in general, because I really see you doing big things. So I really appreciate you being on.
Thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing on the channel. It's looking great.
Yes, sir. Hey man, like my grandma says, y'all, keep going and keep growing. I love y'all.